Welcome back, guys. So what I'm going to do in this video is just show you what I got done on the I'm not going to say upgrade, but it's going to be a supersizing for this little DeWalt saw is what it's going to be. That's the saw I plan on using. So what I got done so far is this is going to be my tabletop here. These are my tracks for my sled that I'm going to make for this thing. And this is how I got it this far. So I started out with just a sheet of plywood 30 inches wide, and that full piece underneath is 8 feet long. And then all I did was I determined that I wanted my tracks about 2 inches on either side of the saw. So that's what these are, set a little bit wider. So that piece ended up being 27 inches wide. I cut that and got it centered where I want it, and then I just screwed it from underneath is what I've done. And then just, laid my tracks in here. These are just 3/4 by 1 inch tracks, aluminum. And I do got to trim them down a little bit here to get them, because they're a little thicker than the plywood. And then just butted these other pieces, just laid them on top, made sure my edge was nice and true. Lining up. Not so much worrying about this front edge, because I'm going to use this front edge to trim everything true. It was out a little wee bit here. It was hard to get the cuts just perfectly square, but it's easy to get parallel cuts. When you flip it, then that becomes the problem, and start cutting and trying to get a perfect 90 degrees. So these didn't turn out to be perfect 90 degrees, but I'm not worrying about it. I know that this plywood edge on the front, the bottom one, is a perfect straight edge. So all I did was I made sure that this was perfectly parallel cuts by setting the saw to 27, and then I was able to get this one flush, but the next one, it seemed like it was running out a little bit, so I just let it hang over a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'll just flush trim it with the router, and then this edge under here, everything will line up, and that's where my fence will be attached to, is this front edge here. So I did put a little tiny skirt. So this thing is getting pretty heavy, but it's not bad to just flip it up. Like if it was on a hinge somewhere, hanging down, I should be able, no problem, hinge it up. A couple of legs drop down, something like that. But I'm gonna flip it over and show you how I'm going to hook this table saw in now. All I did was simply measure the top of the table. There's a couple little things that stick out here. You have to be careful of them. I measured to these outside pieces. And then this width right here, the top, this bar sets down in there a bit. It's kind of offset, so I cut that perfect spot out. All I did was just mark it out, and then I just used my jigsaw to cut that spot out of the original piece. Now, I don't want to have to modify this saw a bit. If anybody has these, you'll know that there's just 2 little clips that pop up, and you can remove the fence, and that's what it will leave you with, this right here. So I'm not modifying this saw in any way, shape, or form. So now when I flop this down in here, that saw is going to lay right down in here. I had to router out a little spot here because of the piece that tells you what the measurement is, and I don't want to remove that, because my aim is to have this just pop out of this little thing here with a couple of clips, and I'm gonna get it in place now, and I'll show you what I'm up against here. So now I got the saw setting in here, so you can see that the saw drops down in there, not quite tight, not quite all the way to the top of this surface here, but it's within about 1/8 of an inch. So I'm not going to try to lower this anymore. I'm going to leave that upper surface the full size it is, and then I'm just going to cut out a collet, or whatever you want to call it, for around the saw that I can actually replace once they get worn, because it's nice to have that fresh saw blade come up through, and then do your cutting, just lower it a bit and then do your cutting, because the the saw being so tight in between, it'll do better cuts on the underside by having it that way. So I want to be able to replace them. They wear out fairly quickly. But anyway, you can see now this saw sits right down tight on this rail, and it's the same both sides. So all I'm going to have to do is design some sort of clamping mechanism, maybe put 3 on each side, to hold this in. Something just quick that's easy to take off, because I don't want to have this saw locked into this project. I want to be able to take it to the job site, and not always am I going to want to take this big thing here with me. So a little bit more work to do. I'm going to flip this back over and show you guys what's coming. there. So I got this thing flipped over now, and you can see everything's going to be easy to get at. This is my, you know, my blade up and down and my angle. Everything's going to work okay. Easy to get at my on and off. So the only thing it changes is now it's got an absolutely beautiful top onto it. And so now what the plan is, I need to cut these rails off so that they're coming out nice and flush with the top of this plywood. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay a piece of material in here to fill this track in, and then I'm going to spray this whole surface with like a contact cement, and then I'm going to laminate, and I'm going to let the laminate run right over top of these rails. And then when I'm all done, what I'll do is I'll just run my laminate trimmer or my flush trimmer down each rail, and then my laminate will extend right over, locking these rails into place that way. I don't even want to really, I shouldn't even have to put any screws in. These are really nice tight fit. I was really careful to push tight against this. And then I just got to cut a nice size piece out of here that I can laminate 2 new ones that will just set in place. They'll be big enough that when I take this one out, I'll be able to open the original one for the saw and change the blade, is the plan. So the only drawback to this unit is I'm going to lose 3/4 of an inch height, but believe it or not, this little saw, the blade raises just as high as my saw here that has the motor hanging out the back. So I'm quite impressed with the height of this thing. It comes up like 3 1/4 inches. So I'm just going to restrict me to like 2.5. But how often do we cut 2.5 inch material thick when we're trying to build cabinets or something like that? So hopefully you guys had fun watching. Hopefully you'll keep tuning in, and thanks for watching this video.